Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Open Digital Planning Show and Tell. If you haven't met me, I'm Emily. I am the Senior Product Manager at MHCLG, and I'm the Product Lead for Open Digital Planning. And very delighted to be coming to you this morning to chat specifically around Open Digital Planning products. It's just a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, so we've got a lot of people on the call. Just a gentle reminder that if you can keep your cameras and microphones off unless you are presenting, that would be much appreciated. And please do leave questions in the chat. Hopefully people from the product teams can pick that up as we go along. We're also recording the session today, so if you do not want to be on the recording, then do turn your cameras off and the recording will be made available after the session. So a little bit about what's coming up today. So I'm just going to be covering a little bit about the introduction and context to Open Digital Planning products. We are then with great excitement going to run an end-to-end demo of a householder planning application through the Open Digital Planning product stack, featuring our lovely series of presenters from the product teams. And then we'll be talking a little bit about next steps for the products. So to cover a little bit about sort of the intro and context, so MHCLG has a program vision, make the planning system in England fit for the 21st century. There is a whole plethora of things that have led to this. Some of the things listed here, this is one of my favorite infographics. There are a lot of kind of issues and pain points within the planning system that have led to delays, delays and issues not only for planning officers and applicants and residents, but anyone who has contact with the planning system. So as a kind of response to that, something we've been working on many times, many years over Open Digital Planning, is to develop alternative modern planning software that deals with the three main parts of the planning application process. So we have the guidance and submission part, which is handled by the PlanX product, which most of you will be familiar with, and we'll be seeing demos of that today. The assessment and processing of applications, which is handled by BOPS, the back office planning system, and then the consultation and engagement portion, as well as index and planning register functions by digital site notice and digital planning register. So those are the three products that we will be going through today. To talk a little bit about the ODP product suite, so very high level. So the current scope of the products to December 2025 covers sort of three main functions. That is planning applications, that includes appeals, discretionary services. These are the non-statutory services, including things like pre-application advice, and also planning enforcement. This is something we've spoken about at recent away days and things. So this is the current working scope between now to the end of next year. We have a few documents available that talk a little bit more about Open Digital Planning products, the strategy, what it covers, what are sort of the high-level things that we'll be working on for the next year. That is from the ODP product roadmap, which I think has been shared, but links are on here and slides will be made available afterwards. Also happy to put things in the chat if anyone wants to find out any more information on that. We do also have individual product roadmaps. So if there's a particular product that you have an interest in, you want to find a bit more about what the team are working on, there are also individual roadmaps, and those are linked on the main ODP product roadmap. You can also share those separately as well. So that's enough of my very brief introduction. I'm now going to be handing over to the teams to do a demo. I believe we're starting off with Johnny from OSL.
Yes, thanks, Emily.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. Right, just to start with, I will make sure my screen sharing is working. So, could I just get a quick verbal thumbs up from someone that you can see a screen email address? Lovely stuff. So, just to introduce myself, I'm Johnny. I work with Open Systems Lab, and this morning I'm going to be demoing the PlanX portion of this end-to-end demo. As Emily said, in this context, PlanX is the sort of public applicant-facing guidance and submission service. So it is collecting the required information from the applicant and then goes on to submit that to BOPS. For the purposes of this demo, just for a bit of context, I am using this service as if I am a homeowner wanting to submit a planning application. I live at an address in Barnet in North London, and I am intending to add a single-storey rear extension to my house to create a larger living space at the back. I've had someone else do the drawings for me, but I'm submitting the application myself, and I haven't previously sought any pre-application advice or anything like that. So that's the context. So now I will run through the service. So you can see here we have this first screen, which simply asks you to enter your email address. The purpose for that is basically it means at any time within 28 days of starting this application, I can come back and resume it. So I don't need to do it all in one go. And the way that works is that an email will be sent to this address that gives you a link that allows you to come back and use it. So we're given this section overview, sort of sets out the different steps you're going to have to go through, 7 steps in total. It's worth saying at this stage, actually, that PlanX's forms, they draw inspiration from the Gov UK design system and then comply with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which basically means that applicants using assistive technologies will be able to fully navigate these services. So if we move into the first section, you can see here, this is actually specific for this piloting phase we're going into. We are offering applicants the opportunity to get involved with sort of user research after they've sent the applications, working with our partners, Nemensa. So yeah, we're interested to see what people have to say about the service once they've had a chance to use it. I'm going to hit yes on this occasion. And now we're into this next stage of the application. So what I'm doing here is I'm entering my postcode. The service is then offering up the addresses that match that postcode. I'm at 71 Heartland Drive. And then what the service has done here in the background is it's using that address, it's queried Ordnance Survey address-based premium, which means that whilst I've just provided a street address, what we're able to provide to BOPS and back of house systems is a full authoritative set of address info, including things like the unique property reference number. So that's a lot of rich address information coming through there. It's also picked out the property boundary from land registry, which is shown as the blue line there. And then as we move into the next step, the user here is asked to confirm their location plan. So what this has done is it's taken that blue line property boundary and it's proposed that as the red line boundary for the specific application. Now, in many instances, that will be fine, but in some it may not. So there is the opportunity here to amend it if you need to. Drag type system, pretty intuitive. You can also, if you really want to, you can draw it from scratch if it was completely wrong. I will just do very quickly here. And of course, in some instances, as an applicant, I may already have a red line location plan prepped anyway. So I do have the option to upload a red line location plan instead. But it's worth noting that if I do choose to do it via this interface, that acts as the location plan for the application. So you don't need to duplicate there by uploading one as well. Just going to continue here. So also using this location data, the service is now looking up any planning constraints that may apply to the site. So it's basically checking just over 15 open data sets, which are hosted on the planning.data platform. And it's seeing which apply. And these include, so it's picked up here, Article 4 direction area, but the constraints that could apply, but it's looking up, include various sort of heritage and conservation designations, ecology designations, flood risk zones, and things like green belt and brownfield as well. So a good set of data sets it's looking at there. And it's important to note this isn't just for information. I'm not just being told this as an applicant and then that's it. In the background, PlanX is using this information to determine what further questions need to be asked that are relevant to these constraints and any specific further information that will be required from the applicant. So we can move on now. So that's that first section, property completed. And now there's a few steps to do with who I am. So as I said, today I'm applying as a homeowner, so I am not applying on behalf of someone else, but in many instances, as someone using the service, I might be an agent working on behalf of a client. So I do have the option to select that, and then that's just a case of supplying some extra information about both myself as the agent and the applicant. State that I'm a private individual, and then I will start entering my details. For reasons that will become clear, I'm actually going to enter the email address of my colleague at BOPS. My contact address is the same as property address. If anyone's familiar with the sort of the template form for this, you'll see that these are some of the same questions that come up. These are the ownership declarations which have to be asked. Oh, which I've answered incorrectly. One second. So long as that. That's one I answered incorrectly. There we are. That's the certificate I expected to see. So that's about you complete. So you get a sense of the progress you're making as you move through. So now I'm going to answer some questions about the project. So at this point, I'm being asked to describe a project. There's an example given here, but say I'm not quite sure how this should be phrased. I might opt to have a look at more information here. And basically every step is accompanied by a more information option like this, where we offer basically the guidance, the detail if it's needed, and where relevant, a policy source as well. In this instance, we give some examples of how you might want to write your project description. So having had a look at that, I now know that I want to write a single story rear extension. I'm gonna stick with that. And basically, these couple of questions here are just almost, they're a final filter, they're a final check to confirm that the project that I'm applying for is within scope of a householder planning application. Because what we're trying to do is minimize the chance of an invalid application being submitted as early as possible. So I can answer this, I can confirm that it's alterations to a home or the surrounding land. And it's a single story rear extension, so it does not involve the conversion of an outbuilding or conversion of a part of a building into a granny flat. So I can select none of these. The work hasn't already started. I'm not submitting a retrospective application. And it does introduce some external materials. So I'm going to hit yes there. And then I've got this dialog to add in materials I'm adding. So there's some new external walls being introduced. Need to enter the existing material, London stock brick, and I'm matching that with the extension. So proposed material is also London stock brick. We can hit save on that. I can go back and edit it if I need to, or if I've got it wrong, I can just remove it. There's also some new windows going in, but again, they're going to match the existing. So white PVC, white PVC. And I can keep going, depending on the complexity of my extension, I can keep going through and adding in more materials as needed. And this information is also contained in my documents. So I know on my elevations, for example, I am labeling with what the proposed materials are. So I'm going to hit yes here. And it does add some more floor space. Again, if you're familiar with the template form, these questions might be familiar, and what PlanX is doing is being sure to meet the statutory requirement that the questions being asked are sort of substantially to the same effect as the Secretary of State template form for this type of planning permission. So I will just go through and answer these. move up to speed. Now, the next few questions, these aren't on the template form, but they are required by the London Data Hub. And because I'm in Barnet as a London borough, that's why I'm being presented with these questions. If I wasn't in a London borough, then I wouldn't be presented with these. The service has already determined, based on my address, that I am in Barnet, so it's tailoring the questions accordingly. For purposes of time, I am not going to enter these. Actually, I could get to this one quickly. Planning to get started pretty soon. And fairly quick turnaround. I'm going to be done by January, I reckon. Interestingly, these responses are required both by the statutory template form and via a London Data Hub requirement. But with this service, what we're doing is we're just capturing that data once, and then it can be the captured information can be sort of applied to both those requirements. I'm just extending my dining room, so no more bedrooms or bathrooms. There are a couple of car parking spaces on the site as existing, and they will be remaining the same as proposed. So that's that section complete. As I said at the start, in this scenario, I've not sought any pre-application advice. If I had, I could hit yes there, and then I would be encouraged to enter some information about what that pre-application advice was, who I spoke to, and any references. And then this question is asking, in the 3 months before making this application, did you use our free guidance service to find out if you need planning permission? So another PlanX service is a guidance service that basically offers that. It tests against permitted development rights to see if you actually need to apply for planning permission at all. The reason why we're asking this in this application process is that as we develop the service, as we develop PlanX and the wider ODP ecosystem, we really want to be able to keep an accurate picture of the user journeys that applicants are going on. Are they using that service first? Is it leading them to this one, etc.? So that's why this question is in here. I'm going to hit yes, I did. And then these few questions here are asked to actually set the fee requirements. Obviously, for householder permission, the fee structure is very simple, but we will apply the same process to more complex application types, which do have sort of different tiers of fee structure. I am not submitting another application. So there you go. That is that section done. And we move on to a section where we will be invited to upload any documents we need to accompany the application. So this notice is advising that the following section will allow me to submit some further information. As a householder in this scenario that hasn't applied for any pre-application advice, I might not actually be 100% sure on what documents I need to supply, but equally, I may have already looked that up. I might have done my research, or I might be an agent who's very familiar with the requirements. So you're actually given the option here to say, yes, I do already know what further information I need to submit, or no, I don't. If I select no, basically, I'll be taken through another few questions, which basically bakes in Barnet specific validation requirements, local list requirements into the service. So that if, as an applicant, I'm not sure, the service will guide me through a few more questions that will either determine categorically that a particular extra piece of information, such as a design and access statement, is required, or in those instances where there might be a discretionary decision to be made, we will advise that the applicant should probably speak to their planning authority before submitting to give the best chances of it being a valid application on receipt. And I will show an example of that here actually. So if I select I don't know, I will be given this notice. And if there's a chance my project could impact on habitats of protected species, I may need to submit an ecological assessment. It's worth saying that these notices can be adapted to suit whatever the desired user journey is for a given local authority. So this could point towards a pre-application service. It could point towards some existing online guidance, contacting the duty officer, etc. And it's also worth noting that if, in order to make an applicant's life as sort of straightforward as possible in submitting this planning application, the service has already checked against any constraints that would have definitely required an ecology assessment. So if the site was in a triple SI, for example, it would automatically determine that an ecology report was required, and it wouldn't ask this question of the applicant. Same with instances like this, flood risk areas. So I'm just going to move through these now. No trees on my site at all. It's not contaminated. It does remove part of the existing building because we're actually taking down a smaller single-story extension to the rear to build a bigger one. And it does alter the roof of that. However, that existing bit is a flat roof. So we can hit yes here. No. And no. And no. And before, as usual, I'm invited to upload my documents, I'm giving this short bit of guidance. So sort of the basic fundamentals that any drawings I upload need to include: scale bars, north arrows, a reference number and title. If I were an agent, if I'd selected earlier on that I am an agent applying on behalf of the client, I wouldn't be shown this step. So the user journey is adapted to the type of user going through this service. And here we have our upload and label step. So the required files shown here have been selected based on those questions that I've just answered. For example, if I had been making changes to a pitched roof, not just a flat roof, then at this point, I would also be asked for existing and proposed roof plans. Now I can choose to upload some my files here. I've got them all ready to go. And then my individual files, individual documents can be tagged with multiple pieces of information. So for example, if I take my existing floor plans here, they are obviously my floor plans existing, but they also show the areas to be demolished. And I can do the same and just go through and label these up. My existing elevations also show areas to be demolished. My reasonable exception statement for fire, proposed floor plans. So the service has determined that I don't actually need a biodiversity checklist, but I've done one, and I have the option to upload any sort of extra documents or supporting information I want to provide here under optional. So I can select other document for that one. Same with a design and access statement, which I've not actually been asked for. My SIL, additional information form, and finally my site plan or block plan. So great, I've got all the right documents I needed to provide. I can go through here, I can change them if I need to, get rid of them, upload different ones. But I'm happy with that, so I can hit continue. At this point, the sort of supplying of information is complete. I have a chance to review everything I've put in right from the start. I can go back and change things if I need to. It is worth saying if you have to change something, if that might impact on follow-on questions that need to be asked. Because as I say, you only asked questions relevant to the information you've supplied up to that point. And you also have this opportunity at this point to print this page, which depending on the sort of print dialogue you have, that should also give you the opportunity to save it as a PDF as well. So you've got something for your records, basically. Finally, there are just some applicant declaration steps, and a final declaration. And at that point, I'm invited to pay. All payments go through the gov.uk pay service, handled by them. And if I were an agent, there's a useful step here of actually being able to invite someone else to pay for the application. So at this point, I might invite my client to pay for it, and I'm the one filling in the information. In this instance, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use some card details here. These are dummy card details. They do not work. Just worth stating that. Okay, let's quickly put in all this information. Okay, so hit pay there. I can confirm my payment. At the moment, we're still in the gov.uk pay portal. Once that's gone through, we're back in PlanX. The application has gone through. I've got my reference number here, my gov.uk pay reference. There's another opportunity to download the application, this time as a CSV file, and the next steps are spelled out for me. It's worth just saying, finally, at any point in this service, I am able to submit some feedback if I want to. So you have this option down at the bottom. You could submit an issue, an idea, a comment, or an inaccuracy, or you can report an issue with this page. And at that point, I will hand over.
Thank you, Johnny. Yeah, I'll take over screen sharing now. Okay, so I'm Stephen Barnes. I work at Lambeth Council, formerly as a planning officer and now working on digital projects, including BOPS, the back office planning system. And I'm going to run you through the validation process of BOPS and the consultation process as well before I hand you over to the register, and then they're going to show you what the application looks like when it's in the register. So this is the dashboard for BOPS. Hopefully you can see it. I'll assume you can unless somebody shouts. And this is what officers or technical officers will see when they log in. They can see all of the cases that are in the system here. We are looking for the case that Johnny's just submitted, so we can filter down to just applications that haven't been started yet. I haven't refreshed this since Johnny submitted that case, but hopefully it will show up. Okay. No, so it looks like we're running with a bit of a lag still, so I'm not going to be able to show you exactly what Johnny's just submitted, but we have submitted a similar case earlier on, so I'll just go through that for the sake of time. This is the case landing page. Once you have found your case, you can come in here, you can see the description, what state it's in. Oh, hang on, sorry, not this one. Try this one. Oh, here it is. As if by television magic. Here's the case that Johnny's just submitted, right on time. So I can come in here, I can assign this to myself or whoever's going to be dealing with it. I can see the address, the state that it's in, which is not started. We've got no valid date yet because we haven't done the validation process, and no consultation dates here because we haven't started that. If we scroll down, so each case has got a sort of 4-step process set out. So very clear where the case is up to and what's happening next. We can see over here that check and validate hasn't been started yet. If we go in here, we've worked with planning officers to identify all of the key tasks, and we've grouped them into logical chunks as well to map out the validation process. This is for a householder application. There's a lot here, A lot of it, some of it is yes or no. Does it meet this technical requirement or not? So we won't go through everything for the sake of time, but general principles. We've got the documents up at the top. So going through them, making sure they're labeled properly, which we'll do in a second. Then we've got key information about the application, which is going to impact on the assessment later on. So the description, constraints and designations, reporting details, and then some other technical requirements, such as the ownership certificate, and whether it's got an environmental statement with it, which if it is the case, then we can go in there and adjust the deadline and so on. That's relevant. But we'll just go through and have a look at documents first. So you'd be going through documents one by one as a general idea. You make sure that they've got the correct labels. This is the local biodiversity checklist that came through, which has been tagged as other document in PlanX, but in BOPS we have other labels which we might want to apply to this. I don't know if there is one particularly for that document. We can then add a document reference number. This is going to appear on the decision notice later on. We can make that decision now. For example, if I'm the planning officer, I might decide what's going to be on the decision notice now. If not, it's optional. And we can say whether the document's valid, yes or no. This one looks fine. If it was the case that we've got a drawing, it's missing a scale bar, you can see a scale bar on this one, but for the purposes of this, let's imagine it's not there. We can say, is the document valid? No. And then we get taken to this next part of the process. We can say missing a scale bar, and here we can preview guidance that's going to be available to the applicant, which we can see in a second as well. And if there are issues that you're picking up with documents and in individual tasks here as you go through this workflow, then the issues are being queued up. So we're not sending an email each time something's marked as invalid here. It's kind of forming a queue to send to the applicant all in one go. So if there was an issue with the fee as well, I could explain in here, total should be XXX, and you can phone such and such number to be able to go and make the payment. And again, that's queuing up issues to raise to the applicant. We're not going to go through everything, but I will show you how that appears as an applicant if there were issues with that. So because there's issues marked as invalid on here, BOPS won't let you make the application valid to avoid making a mistake there. So you can only mark it as invalid, but you do have to make a decision about that. These are the copies of the emails coming through from the system. So this was the okay, this is the email about whether the case is valid.
Stephen, you're only sharing one tab, so we can't see anything else.
Thank you. I'll be showing something else. Okay. So this is the email that the system's generated. It's changes needed, goes out to the applicant to say, you can use the link below. If we don't receive this information by this date, we may close your application. And if I click through that link, I go through to here. Hopefully that's changed, but please shout if not. And then again, I have a similar, this is what the applicant would through, follow the link to each section. Once you've done the task, you can mark it as complete. At the moment, it's not started. Here we ask for a replacement document with the scale bar on it. We can just choose a document to show that works. Then that's getting processed straight into the BOPS system. There's no email exchange or attachments to upload. And here I can follow the instructions that the officer's given me. I can say that I've made payment, give a reference number if I had one, and send that back to the officer. And then as the applicant, I can see, okay, I've responded to all of the requests. I know where I'm up to. And back in BOPS. Sorry, too many tabs here. Okay, once that has been updated, back in BOPS, it will tell me there's been responses there. I can then go in, check what they were, mark those issues as dealt with. You can see the replacement document there. And given that everything's been resolved, now I can make the application valid. The date will be calculated from the date that they were responded to, so 8 weeks from today. I can say that I want to make it available on the public portal, assuming that everything's been redacted and so on. And then I can move on to consultation, which is quite breezy in BOPS. So picking out the adjoining neighbors, we've created this feature which is based on drawing the extent of adjoining neighbors. So I can quickly scoop up properties surrounding the site. Once I've done that, it doesn't need to be perfect, just the general extent. But as I'm drawing that, BOPS is kept producing a list of those neighbors based on Royal Mail postal data, as far as I know, and creating that list in the background. So if I change that, you can see it's dynamically moving there to make it a bigger or smaller list based on how many properties being picked up. Once I'm happy with the extent and I've picked all the right neighbors for this consultation, all I need to do is press confirm and send. This is the testing instance. So here it's going to show the status as printing, but in the real world use, it would tell us either it's been printed and sent or it's, processing with the printer, which is Gov Notify. So it'd be very clear, but just to explain that. And final thing to show just before I hand you over to Register team is producing a site notice. So this is quite a common task. We've created a couple of options here depending on what different councils do. So you can send it to an internal team to print them out and have them sent, dispatched and put up. You can send it to the applicant themselves with some guidance by pressing that button there, or we can put the date in here and generate PDF of the site notice now. Once that's done, view it, download it and view it like here. This is going to have the link to the register and the details that need to be on the site notice. So that's up to the consultation portion, and I'll hand you over now to Bob who will talk about the register.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Let me just get my screen sharing rolling. So hopefully you can now see the homepage for the Digital Planning Register. Can you give me a thumbs up if that's showing through all right there?
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent. So as you can see, we've got some of the councils here who will be available soon enough. We are on the staging environment here, but the actual address will be planningregister.org. And that will allow everyone to jump on board and see what's going on. as we submitted something to Barnet, we can jump in here and we can see immediately up front, this is actually the application that was just submitted through the system. It's popped up here as the most recent one on board. And we can see this one here. I've just realized the text on here, for some reason, is slightly the wrong color. We did make some minor tweaks, so that one's been overlooked. There's always something. And you can see on here, you will be able to search for these applications. So if we wanted to have a little look, apparently that's really fixed. There we go. You'll also be able to search for applications. So if we, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the full thing. We can see if we search for the reference number that we got through when we submitted, we'll be able to get hold of our application right here. So we can view this application. We can see that what we get is we get the red line on here is exactly as it was positioned on the submission. We can see here we have got our reference, we've got the exact address in here, and it gives us all the information about when a consultation will be ending on it, so people know when they can submit their comments by. We've got a consultation in the status of where the consultation is at. We can indeed see the documents. The only one that's currently available on here is actually the application form itself, which gives us basically everything that was submitted in a reasonably easy to read sort of view on there. And it tells us a little bit about who has actually applied, where that's relevant. So obviously, once people are on here, they want to be able to comment on these things. So before they do comment, we ask them a few questions. We give them a bit of information about what they can and can't comment on to try and guide them into doing the correct things in terms of what they should be submitting. And we encourage them to submit their comments in here when they are relevant. So we can see we are commenting on the application we just looked at. We can ask them how they feel. We're going to put a neutral comment in just because we don't get many of those. And we can select which topics we want to comment on. So we can specifically, we can look at like design, the use, various impacts on natural light. These are the core sort of elements that are generally material considerations across the country. And of course, people can sort of hop in another one. And we have also provided a little bit of information about what happens to their comments, what kind of information, what kind of things they can expect to be responded to. We're going to make a comment on the natural, let's make a comment on a couple of them on here, just to show you how we're going on. So we can see we're on number 1 of 2. So I can make a comment on the light here. We can then continue along to the next one, and they do actually have to put some sort of comment in if they've selected they want to. So this would be something like it overlooks my house. Then continue along, and they can submit their details. If they're at all concerned about whether how their information is going to be handled, we do pop this on here, informing them of why we need to know this information on here. So I can pop in some, let's put myself in. But you don't get my address. I'm going to put in 18 Test Street. We'll pop in a random postcode. That's the one I usually use. And obviously they can add in their email address and telephone number. These are both optional, allowing us to contact them if they want to. Will not be published anywhere online. So let's continue through with that. We can then check through and make sure that everything we wanted to comment on is on here. We can see all the bits and pieces going on. The last little reminder, that's exactly the same thing as before, just to make sure people know what's going on. And we can then send that. And we've got a bug. What's going on with this one? This worked earlier. Let's try that one more time. Nope. Okay. Not quite sure why that's not sending. Classic live demo stuff. But you can see if there is a problem, it does let people know that it's not been submitted. and then they will show up on other things. I swear I submitted one on something else before. Let's very quickly see if I can do it on a different one. See if it was a problem with that one. No, okay, fair enough. Something set up not quite right. But yeah, you can then submit a comment. Once those comments are reviewed and published, they will show up on here as well as submitted comments. So I'll hand it back on over to Stephen, I think, to do the last bits.
Yes, thank you. I'm now going to canter through assessment and review. So those comments didn't come through, but I did populate earlier on what that would look like in BOPS with a couple of comments, because it doesn't rain, but it pours with neighbor comments. And it's probably a bit more useful to see this populated. So you can see in BOPS, we'd see if they're neutral, objection, or support based on the way they filled out the form just there in the register. So that's how we'd be getting our comments through. As the planning officer, I would come into the assessment step. I can then do some checks, do some assessor remarks, which should be very familiar to councils who produce officer reports, and then I can assess against policies and guidance before I finalize my decision notice, in essence. So some of this I've already done, which will pull through to the preview that I'll show you in a minute. But the key things to highlight is that we've built in some sense checking of what's going on. So does the proposal match, does the description match the plans? If not, maybe we need to change the description, and then I can register a request to talk to the applicant, ask the applicant about a new description in here. Are the plans consistent with each other? If not, maybe I want a new document. And is there an issue with the red line as a sort of later stage check? And if not, maybe I want to request to change that red line, which I can draw and send back to the applicant. Moving through, we've got the site history as well. We've also got a step here to check which consultees have been consulted. So if I go in here, I can see what constraints have been picked up earlier on by PlanX, for example. I can see that there's no consultee marked down against this Article 4 direction. If this was a flood zone or conservation area, maybe I'd be expecting to see a particular consultee against this. Maybe I'd be expecting to see the Environment Agency or an internal conservation team for those examples. But in this case, I'm happy nobody needed to be consulted on an Article 4 direction. So I confirm that was checked. But that's the kind of for errors. So we've got these checks that happen as part of the assessment process to avoid issues later on when they come to be signed off. Assess against policies guidance. So in here, we've got the ability to add in your officer assessment against your local policies. I go into here. This is actually configured against policies that are held and stored in policies reference now. So you would be able to report on which policies were being used in the future as relevant to particular cases and build up some rich data about that, potentially. The speed of this demo. Go back to this. Once I'm happy, I've added my site history, I've added my description of what's going on, where the property is, and my assessment. I can preview it all in here before I put in my final recommendation. I've got local plan, and if I wanted to give any note to my manager here, I could enter it and it would just be communicated to the manager. Conditions for householders, BOPS is going to suggest 3 conditions, which are we found to be the most common, which are in accordance with the plans, the time limit, and that materials should match. If we wanted to add another one, we could quickly type in the details of that. I'm not going to do that now. But if we thought that any of those suggested conditions weren't relevant, we could just remove them there. And informatives, there would be a list of informatives pre-configured for your council that you then add like that. Once happy with all of that and it's done properly, again, you can preview what you've inputted there. You can also preview the decision notice with the overall reason, conditions, and informatives. And any of the plans that you've marked as should appear on the decision notice as an approved plan. And a red line site boundary as well, which you can print off as a PDF if you wanted to. Once I press submit recommendation here, it's now with a manager, and I don't have very long, so I'm just going to very quickly show you the review and sign off screens, and now how that looks as a manager. So this has been submitted through. Manager area looks slightly different. I've got the boundary up, the recommendation up here. I can go in, I can see the neighbours and whether they've objected or made neutral comments or supportive comments as well. So I can get a very quick idea of what the reaction's been around the site and where I might need to focus my attention. Similar with these high-level highlighted things at the top. Did the letters actually get posted out? If there's a response, is it an objection or not? And I can navigate into documents as well and site history. Assuming everything was fine and I've had the time to look through it, I can then say whether I agree with the recommendation. If I do, then I can record that formally. If I went into these, then I'd just be able to edit or accept that content that we've just seen on the previous screens that would be entered by the officers. But assuming everything was fine, and I trusted this officer, I don't need to look at the preview again, then I can just publish the decision here, and then that would be emailed out to the applicant. And it should now be available on the register portal as well, or will be in a moment. And that is the review bit. I don't know, Bobby, if you want to see if that comes through on register side to complete that end to end.
Yeah, it should be coming through momentarily. I'm literally should be available in about under a minute. Just double checking, that was 2400117, wasn't it? The one we just updated. Yeah. Smashing. So let me actually share my screen. So this is this application here. As you can see, we have got more of those documents popped in that have populated in from before. Hopefully, if I refresh this now, there we go. You can see that it is now been determined. We have a decision of granted, and the decision notice has not popped through as a document yet. That should come along shortly as well. You'll be able to see when that decision was made, what the decision was, and also the status. It is also worth noting that we do have a reasonable amount of explanatory information on these pages as well, about what these kind of decisions make, what the important decisions are that are on here. Plenty of content in here to help people understand exactly what it is that they are actually looking at, rather than just flooding them with a lot of data that may not make sense to them yet. So there we are. That's everything from our end.
Thank you very much, everyone, for that. I have a quick little roundup kind of next step. So thank you to our presenters for going through that wonderful end-to-end demo. Always is great to see these things working out in real life, bugs and all. It happens to all of us at the best of times. So just bear with me a moment now. I'll just share my screen again. Thank you for everyone putting your comments in the chats as well. Anything that isn't answered, we will take offline and make sure that you know, that is circulated, and also collate these kind of questions for future reference as well. Can someone just confirm my screen sharing? Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Cool. So going on to next steps. So if you've been keeping me on chat, you'll be hearing some things around like maybe stack testing, pilot testing, as we've also mentioned at general meetings this week. So a very big and important next step for the products is we are launching some end-to-end pilots in 5 LPAs over the next few months. Very excitedly starting hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So that will be really testing, you know, these out in the wild with live applications, testing it end to end, and make sure that, you know, these all work and getting more feedback and insight into the products. Hopefully launching further pilots early next year with some interested LPAs. Please do get in touch if this is something that you'd be interested in taking part in. We have ongoing metrics and evaluation work, which is measuring the impact of the products and how they're performing. We're also looking at defining the commercial strategy for the products as well. So that's a very exciting development. Lots of questions around how these products will be made available, costs, etc. Also continuing to deliver the outcomes of the ODP product roadmap. Link is on there. Make sure that link is shared to all attendees as well. And there are also opportunities to join the product space in open digital planning to co-design and adopt products for the LPAs on the call. You would have heard more about this earlier this week, but do speak to your community manager if this is something that you would be interested in. But yeah, lots of things happening out in the world of products. So do keep your eyes peeled for further updates. And lastly, is a big thank you for coming along.